I feel like I really understand that we have a responsibility to change the narrative around what we are delivering to young people in the classroom. But I would describe the actual day-to-day learning side of things.
Every royal family eventually gets an outsider who walks in, changes the shape of the family photo, and somehow never quite leaves the headlines again. For the House of Windsor, that outsider is a soft-spoken property developer from London with an Italian surname nobody could pronounce on the first try. He is not a duke. He is not in line for anything grander than a corner office. And yet, for the last several years, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi has been one of the most quietly discussed men connected to the British monarchy, not because he sought the spotlight, but because he married into a family that never gets to leave it. So who is he really, underneath the tailored suits and the property portfolios? Let's find out. Start with the name itself, because it tells you almost everything you need to know before you even get to the biography. Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi sounds like it belongs on a plaque in a Florentine museum, not on a wedding invitation next to Princess. That's not an accident. His father, Alessandro Alex Mapelli Mozzi, was born in Buenos Aires to an Anglo-Italian family, and the Mapelli Mozzi name carries a real, if largely ceremonial, aristocratic history in Italy. Members of the family have long used the title Count, tracing back to Italian nobility that predates the country's 1946 abolition of royal and noble titles. Whether or not that title carries any formal legal weight today in Italy or Britain is genuinely debatable. The BBC itself has noted the title isn't officially recognized in either country, but the lineage and the lifestyle that come with it are very real. The family's ancestral property, the Villa Mapelli Mozzi in northern Italy, is a centuries-old estate that now operates as an upscale wedding and event venue, the kind of place where old money quietly rents itself out to new money. But Edoardo isn't a man coasting on a dusty family tree. He built a career of his own, and it happens to be one rooted in exactly the kind of work his family's aesthetic sensibilities would predict, designing and selling extremely expensive real estate. Edoardo Alessandro Mapelli Mozzi was born on November 19, 1983, in London. His education reads like a checklist for a certain kind of British upper-middle-class upbringing. The Dragon School in Oxford, then Radley College, followed by a degree from the University of Edinburgh. Along the way, he's spoken publicly about being dyslexic, a trait he shares, as it happens, with his future wife, Princess Beatrice, who has also discussed her own learning difficulties at school. His parents' marriage didn't last. His father eventually settled in France, and relatively little about that side of the family's day-to-day life has made it into the press since. His mother, Nikki Williams Ellis, remarried a Conservative Party official named Christopher Shale, who effectively raised Edoardo as his own and with whom Edoardo developed a close relationship. That blended family gave Edoardo a half-brother, Albie Shale, and the two remain close today. When Christopher Shale died suddenly in 2011, Edoardo channeled the loss into something concrete. Alongside Albie, he co-founded a charitable initiative called Cricket Builds Hope, which has worked to build cricket facilities in Rwanda in his stepfather's memory. It's a detail that tends to get buried under the tabloid noise, but it says something about how the family actually operates when the cameras aren't necessarily rolling. Professionally, Edoardo didn't wait around. In 2007, in his early 20s, he founded Bonda Property, a London-based development and interior design firm built around a specific idea. By underused corners of the city, transform them into polished, design-forward homes, and sell them to buyers with serious money to spend. Over the years, Bonda has become known for a distinctive, almost hotel-like aesthetic applied to private residences, and Edoardo himself has built a public design persona to match, showing up at industry events, giving interviews about architecture and property trends, and building an Instagram presence that mostly functions as a running advertisement for his own portfolio. Not everything about Bonda's story has been smooth. Property commentators have periodically pushed back on the company's marketing language, noting that projects billed as being in undervalued parts of London have sometimes landed in neighborhoods, like Notting Hill, that are anything but undervalued by any reasonable definition. And Bonda's ambitions haven't always translated overseas. A high-profile beachfront development the company was linked to on Australia's Gold Coast ultimately collapsed, with the company behind the project entering administration. A reminder that even well-connected developers aren't immune to a bad market or an overreaching pitch. Through it all, Edoardo has kept a fairly consistent public rhythm. Absorb the setback, keep showing up to the next design conference, keep posting about the next project. He's also never been shy about having opinions outside of interior design. In the run-up to London's 2016 mayoral election, he wrote publicly in favor of more central London redevelopment, and around the same period he was openly critical of certain UK and US political figures on social media, a habit that stands out a bit, given how carefully most people who eventually marry into the royal family tend to scrub their old opinions from the internet. Long before Edoardo was linked to a princess, he was building a life with someone else entirely. Dara Huang is an American-born Harvard-educated architect who went on to build a respected career of her own, eventually founding a design and architecture firm called D.H. Liza Studio, sometimes referenced under other branding as her work has evolved. She and Edoardo were together for several years and became engaged around 2014. In 2016, they had a son together, Christopher Wolf Mapelli Mozzi, known to everyone as Wolfie. By 2018, though, the engagement had ended. Neither Edoardo nor Dara has gone into detail publicly about why, and to their credit, both have largely kept the specifics of their separation out of the tabloids, a level of discretion that's honestly a little rare in stories like this one. What is publicly known is straightforward. They separated, they share custody of Wolfie, and Dara has continued to build her own independent career in design since. The timing of what came next did raise some eyebrows at the time. Within a matter of months of the split from Dara becoming public, Edoardo had begun a relationship with Princess Beatrice, something that inevitably generated speculation in royal watching circles about overlap, even though no credible reporting has ever substantiated any wrongdoing on either side, and both Edoardo and Dara have simply moved forward with their lives. What matters most in the years since is how well the co-parenting has apparently gone. By all public accounts, the arrangement between Dara and Edoardo has remained amicable, with Wolfie splitting time between both parents and being fully folded into Edoardo and Beatrice's household as well. Beatrice, for her part, has stepped into the role of stepmother to Wolfie and is by all reports warmly embraced by him. It's not the tidy, storybook set-up royal biographers usually get to write about, but it's arguably a more grown-up one. The way Edoardo and Beatrice actually got together isn't the meet-cute the tabloids initially tried to sell. This wasn't two strangers colliding at a gala. The Mapelli Mozzi family and the York family, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, had been close friends for decades before Edoardo and Beatrice ever became a couple. When their relationship was eventually announced, Edoardo's mother said plainly that her family had known Beatrice for most of her life. These were two people who had spent years circling the same social and charitable circles without it ever becoming romantic. Until, at some point around September 2018, it did. Word of the relationship reached the press by November 2018, not long after Edoardo's engagement to Dara had ended, and well after Beatrice's earlier long relationship with businessman Dave Clark had ended in 2016. Their first real public appearance as a couple came in March 2019 at a fundraising event at the National Portrait Gallery in London, which is when the tabloids properly took notice of a tall, well-dressed property developer suddenly standing beside a princess. 2 months later, they attended the wedding of Lady Gabriella Windsor together, effectively confirming the relationship was serious. By September 2019, Edoardo had proposed during a trip to Italy, with a custom-designed ring made in collaboration with British jeweler Sean Lean. On September 26, 2019, Buckingham Palace made the engagement official. The couple's own statement was almost strikingly ordinary for a royal announcement. Simple excitement about beginning a life together, which, in hindsight, turned out to be the calm before a genuinely dramatic run-up to the wedding itself. The original plan was about as traditional as royal weddings get, a ceremony at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace, scheduled for May 2020, followed by a reception in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. Then two things happened in quick succession that upended it entirely. First, in November 2019, Prince Andrew gave a widely criticized television interview addressing his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The fallout was immediate and severe, and it effectively ended Andrew's public royal role. That controversy inevitably reshaped the mood and scale of his daughter's upcoming wedding. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic, which shut down public life across the world in the spring of 2020 and made the original ceremony impossible to hold as planned. When Beatrice and Edoardo finally married on July 17, 2020, it was a small, private affair at the Royal Chapel of All Saints on the Royal Lodge Estate in Windsor, attended only by immediate family, with no advance public announcement. In a strange way, the stripped-down setting made a couple of details stand out even more. Beatrice wore a vintage gown that had originally belonged to her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, a Norman Hartnell-designed ivory silk gown from the early 1960s, along with one of the Queen's diamond tiaras. Prince Andrew walked his daughter down the aisle, but was notably absent from the official wedding photographs released afterward, a choice widely read as an attempt to keep the day's public narrative focused on the couple rather than on the surrounding scandal. What followed the wedding was, by royal standards, a relatively unglamorous and grounded few years. Beatrice and Edoardo aren't working royals, which means no official state duties and no automatic public funding for their household. Both hold real jobs. Beatrice has worked in a corporate strategic partnerships role in the tech sector, and Edoardo continues to run Bonda. They initially settled into an apartment at St. James's Palace, before later moving the family into a converted farmhouse in the Cotswolds, splitting time between London during the week and the countryside on weekends. The family grew steadily. In September 2021, Beatrice gave birth to their daughter Sienna Elizabeth Mapelli Mozzi. In January 2025, their second daughter, Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mozzi, was born several weeks premature, an experience Beatrice has since spoken about publicly, including taking on a new charitable patronage supporting research and awareness around premature birth. Between Wolfie, Sienna, and Athena, Edoardo now sits at the center of a genuinely modern blended family spanning 2 households, with, by every available account, a functional and civil co-parenting relationship with Wolfie's mother. No honest account of this family can avoid the elephant in the room. Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein has continued to cast a long shadow, and it hasn't gone away with time. Renewed document releases from U.S. authorities in the years since Andrew's 2019 interview have kept his name, and by extension his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson's and his daughter's names, in the headlines repeatedly. Reporting on newly unsealed material has, at various points, referenced Beatrice and her sister Eugenie in the context of decades-old family correspondence and social contact connected to Epstein during their younger years, material that has understandably reignited public scrutiny of the family, even though it does not amount to any allegation of wrongdoing by either sister. By late 2025, King Charles had formally stripped Andrew of his remaining royal styling and required him to leave Royal Lodge, marking one of the more significant steps yet in the family's effort to distance the institution from him. For Beatrice and Edoardo specifically, the position has been an uncomfortable one to occupy, neither publicly defending Andrew nor visibly cutting ties, given that he is, after all, her father and walked her down the aisle at her own wedding. Through it, Edoardo's public posture has been largely unchanged. He has continued to show up to his industry events and continued building Banda's next projects, staying visibly out of the family controversy while remaining, by most accounts, a steady presence for his wife. As of 2026, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi is in his early 40s, still running Bonda property, still appearing at international design events, and still, by most measures, the least tabloid controversial member of one of Britain's most scrutinized family units. He's a father across 2 households, a husband to a working royal who holds a real day job of her own, and a business owner who has weathered at least one very public overseas setback without apparently losing much momentum. None of this fits neatly into the dashing outsider marries into royalty story that got written about him back in 2019. The real version is messier and honestly more interesting. A man with a genuinely unusual aristocratic background who built his own career rather than living off his family name, who came into his marriage already a father with a co-parenting relationship to manage, and who has spent the years since quietly standing next to a family navigating one of its most difficult chapters in decades. Whatever else gets written about Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi going forward, the through line so far has been consistency, showing up, building the next project, and staying out of the noise as much as a man married to a princess reasonably can. That's the real story behind the count who married into the crown. Not a fairy tale, and not a scandal either. Just a genuinely complicated modern family trying to hold itself together in public.